Most men think a woman loses interest when he steps back. But the truth is far more unsettling. She doesn't reveal who she really is when you're present. She reveals it when you're gone. That silence you're afraid of? That's the moment her real feelings surface. And depending on the kind of man you've been, she'll either start craving you in ways she never admitted, or she'll replace you before you even notice. In this video, I'm going to break down the 7 hidden things a woman feels during your absence, the exact psychological shifts that determine whether she leans in or checks out. If you've ever wondered what happens in her mind the moment you stop chasing, you're about to find out. There's a part of female psychology almost no one talks about, not because it's complicated, but because it exposes a truth most people would rather avoid. Women respond more honestly to absence than presence. What she claims she wants and what she actually reacts to are often two very different things. And when you understand that gap, the entire dating dynamic starts to make sense. If you want more unfiltered insights like this, tap like and subscribe. Because the shift you're about to learn isn't common knowledge, but it changes everything. Let's break down the very first change she experiences once you step back. Number 1, the emotional reset. When your absence breaks her pattern. When a man steps back, even just slightly, something subtle but powerful shifts inside a woman. Her mind isn't reacting to loss yet. It's reacting to the disruption of a pattern, and patterns are what the female brain relies on to feel emotionally organized. When you stop showing up the way you used to, her nervous system notices before her heart does. It's the same sensation you get when you reach for your keys in the pocket where they should be. That quick, jarring moment when reality doesn't match expectation. For her, your voice, your presence, your messages, even your silence used to follow a rhythm. Maybe she didn't appreciate it. Maybe she didn't even consciously value it, but it was there. Predictable. Comfortable, automatic. And when you pull that rhythm back, even without meaning to, she experiences a reset. Not a meltdown, not longing. A reset. An interruption of emotional autopilot. That reset forces a confronting question she usually avoids. What exactly was he bringing into my life? Not, do I miss him? But what did his presence actually do for me? It's a question that only appears in absence, never in routine. If you're a man with structure, standards, and a grounded masculine presence, that sudden stillness around her feels different. It's not loud, but it's noticeable. Almost like a room where something is missing, even if she can't name it yet. She feels the gap before she understands it. But if you're a man who answered instantly, chased without thinking, or made yourself too available, the reset doesn't create tension. It creates relief. Not the reaction any man wants, but the one that appears when your presence became predictable to the point of emotional saturation. Picture this. She wakes up, reaches for her phone like she always does, not to look for you, just out of habit. A scroll, a tap, a check, and nothing from you. It's tiny, almost invisible. But the brain notices it anyway, because the pattern broke. And when a pattern breaks, the mind starts asking why. She won't say it out loud. She may not even admit it to herself. But deep down, a small evaluation process has begun. Not emotional, not romantic, analytical. Your absence isn't just felt, it's measured. Number 2, the ego disruption. When she realizes you're not chasing. Before a woman ever misses you, before attraction deepens or curiosity kicks in, something else reacts first. Her ego. Not in a negative, arrogant sense, but in the deeply human way we all grow accustomed to the attention we receive. And in modern dating, women are used to being noticed. They're used to pings, reactions, quick replies, and men who try to maintain relevance. So when you stop feeding that stream, even accidentally, the first shock doesn't hit her emotions. It hits her sense of identity. Her mind starts with the simplest assumption: he must be busy. But as hours turn to a day, and a day turns to two, something inside her starts to itch. Not longing, but confusion. A small internal question forms: why isn't he acting like the others? This is where ego-reactive behavior shows up. Not because she's trying to move on, not because she wants someone else, but because she wants to check whether she still holds the influence she assumed she had over you. So she posts a little more, dresses up slightly better before taking a selfie, drops a quote that sounds deep but is really just strategic ambiguity. Maybe she likes an older picture of you, the digital equivalent of nudging your shoulder to see if you turn around. None of these actions are meant for other men. They're radar signals, probes, soft tests. She wants to know whether your attention was genuine or simply available. And every time you don't bite, something inside her shifts. A quiet frustration begins to build, not toward you, but toward the gap between who she believed she was in your eyes and what your current silence suggests. This is where cognitive dissonance enters. Her self-image, "men always chase me," no longer matches your behavior. That gap is uncomfortable, and discomfort creates mental gravity. She starts thinking about you more, not because she's falling in love, but because she is trying to reconcile the version of herself she expected you to validate. Your lack of reaction becomes its own kind of message. Not aggressive, not manipulative. Simply a reflection of a man who values his energy enough not to hand it out on command. And that's when a deeper realization hits her. If you're not chasing, she has to question whether she was as irreplaceable as she thought. Number 3, the power reversal. When control quietly slips toward you. There's a moment in every connection where the emotional weight shifts. It doesn't happen loudly. It doesn't happen after a fight or a dramatic goodbye. It happens in silence. Specifically, your silence. When you stop reacting instantly, stop reaching first, stop trying to keep the energy alive on your own, something unexpected unfolds. The balance of psychological momentum begins to tilt. In any relationship, the person who invests more emotional energy holds less influence, not because they care too much, but because they're the one actively stabilizing the connection. And when you stop doing that, even momentarily, you create space. Space she didn't anticipate. Space she cannot control. Space she has to respond to, whether she wants to or not. That's when she feels the one emotion women dislike more than rejection: uncertainty. Not uncertainty about you as a person, but uncertainty about her position in your world. When a woman feels safe in your attention, she relaxes. When she feels slightly unsure, she wakes up emotionally. This is why your silence carries weight. It's not about ignoring her. It's about no longer managing her perception of you. Suddenly, she checks her phone more often. Not obsessively, but enough for her to notice she's doing it. She rereads old messages, trying to analyze the tone. She wonders whether she missed a sign. She pays closer attention to when you're online. She mentions you casually to a mutual friend, hoping to hear something that restores the sense of control she used to feel without effort. Picture the two of you in a phase where everything seemed balanced. Consistent texting, playful energy, familiar momentum. Then you pull back half a step, not disappearing, just living your life without broadcasting it. That tiny shift disrupts her internal rhythm. What once felt predictable now feels unstable, and instability, when it comes to dynamic between a man and a woman, can be surprisingly magnetic. This isn't manipulation. It's the natural consequence of emotional equilibrium returning to center. She's sensing that her influence isn't guaranteed, that your attention isn't automatic, that you have a life, and she's no longer sure how much of it she occupies. Your silence is not emptiness, it's communication. Number 4, the rising tension. Why distance amplifies attraction. Attraction isn't built in comfort. It's built in tension. The kind of emotional tension that comes from not having full access to someone you want to understand. And when you step back, Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. A subtle but powerful formula takes effect inside her mind. Scarcity plus uncertainty equals heightened desire. She's not falling for you because you're gone. She's reacting to the emotional space your absence creates. Women don't stay interested in men who are constantly available, instantly responsive, or endlessly predictable. That kind of access feels safe, but not stimulating. What draws a woman in is the quiet unpredictability of a man who has a life that doesn't orbit her. A life she wants to be part of, but can't fully claim. When you stop over-investing, you don't become distant. You become defined. You become a man who chooses where his attention goes, instead of scattering it everywhere. That controlled distance triggers a part of her psychology built around imagination. Because when a woman doesn't know exactly where she stands, her mind fills in the spaces. Not with fear, but with curiosity. Curiosity becomes interest. Interest becomes emotional pull. Imagine this scenario. She sees you online, maybe for a moment. Normally, that would be her cue to expect a message from you. A check-in, a reaction, something. But this time, nothing. That tiny moment becomes a micro-trigger. It plants a thought she didn't expect. Why isn't he talking to me? It's not drama, it's contrast. And contrast is what creates attraction. And here's the part most men overlook. You're not playing games by stepping back. You're practicing emotional discipline. You're letting the connection breathe instead of smothering it. You're allowing her mind the space to come toward you instead of pushing your way into her day. Women don't become more attracted because you vanish. They become more attracted because your presence stops feeling guaranteed. Because your energy becomes something she has to earn, not something she passively receives. A man's presence doesn't pull a woman in. The right amount of distance does.
Number 5. The tests. How she tries to pull you back into her frame. When your absence starts to influence a woman, she rarely admits it directly. Instead, she does something far more instinctive. She tests you, not out of manipulation and not because she wants to play games, but because she's trying to understand her position in your world after the shift you created. Every test she initiates has one purpose: to measure your emotional temperature without revealing hers. These tests usually begin lightly: a random like on one of your older posts, a story view that appears the second you upload something, a subtle reply to something insignificant you shared. None of these actions are meant to restart the conversation. They're meant to see whether you'll take the bait and restore the dynamic she used to feel comfortable with. If you don't respond, the tests escalate. Maybe she sends a short message. Hey, hope you're doing well. To an untrained man, this feels like interest. To a man who understands female psychology, it's a pressure test. She's not reaching out to reconnect emotionally. She's checking whether she still has the ability to pull you in with minimal effort. If you respond too quickly, too enthusiastically, or try to restart the conversation with emotional investment she hasn't earned, she'll feel it instantly, not as warmth, but as confirmation. You're still available on demand, and the moment she confirms that, the power dynamic resets in her favor, and the tension that made her think about you dissolves. But if you respond calmly, neutrally, or simply allow things to remain where they are, the test deepens. She may ask mutual friends about you. She may suddenly show up in places where she knows you might be. In more extreme cases, she might even flirt with someone in your presence, not because she wants the man, but because she wants to see whether you react. The difference between men who fail these tests and men who maintain their frame is simple. One responds from fear, the other from self-respect. These tests aren't obstacles, they're indicators. A woman only tests what she isn't ready to let go of. If she's testing you, it means you're still very much on her mind.
Number 6. The split path. When she starts scanning for alternatives. Not every woman responds to your absence with curiosity or growing attraction. Sometimes the opposite happens. But even that tells you something important. Women naturally have options, but options are not the same as emotional investment. A woman might receive attention from multiple men, but attention only becomes meaningful when your presence created something she can't easily replace. If it didn't, your absence won't sting. It'll simply redirect her focus elsewhere. This is the moment many men misread entirely. They assume that if she starts talking to someone new or entertaining another guy's energy, it means he won and you lost. But human psychology isn't that simple. What's actually happening is a filtering process. If she can shift her attention without any emotional friction, it means her connection to you was shallow to begin with. Not non-existent, just light. Light enough that losing your presence doesn't disrupt her internal world. The real problem begins when a man panics in response. The moment he senses she might be exploring another option, he reacts emotionally instead of strategically, checking her social media, reaching out repeatedly, trying to prove that he's better than the other guy. But the second you enter a competition you were never invited to, you lose by default. Because a man with grounded self-worth does not compete for a place in someone's life. He chooses who gets access to his. Picture this scenario. You casually find out she's been talking to someone else, not in a committed sense, but enough to get your attention. You feel that familiar sting in your chest, the one that tempts you to act impulsively. But what you do next determines whether you stay in your masculine center or collapse into insecurity. If you chase, you confirm her decision. If you try to outshine the other man, you shrink your own value. But if you remain steady, neither confrontational nor needy, you send a completely different message. I'm not here to prove myself. I'm here to choose what aligns with me. That's the energy women respect. Not because it's aloof, but because it signals a man who doesn't define his worth by someone else's fickle attention. If she drifts easily, let her. It's not a rejection, it's information.
Number 7, the final outcome. She repositions or replaces you. Every emotional shift, every pause, every test eventually leads to one of two outcomes. There's no gray area here, no hidden third option. When a woman has gone through the internal cycle triggered by your absence, she will either move back toward you with a deeper sense of respect, or she will drift in another direction entirely. Both outcomes reveal more about her than they do about you. When she comes back, the energy is noticeably different. She's not returning to pick up where things left off. She's returning because the distance forced clarity. She saw the difference between your presence and every other man's. She recognized that you weren't chasing, you weren't collapsing, and you weren't waiting for her call to define your day. That combination creates a new frame, one where she no longer assumes your attention, but values it. This is where many men ruin the dynamic. She reaches out lightly, maybe sends a warm message, maybe shows real initiative, and he leaps toward her like the old version of himself, undoing all the grounded masculine momentum he built. What he should do instead is simple. Observe. Watch how she invests this time. Notice whether her energy is consistent, feminine, and cooperative. Make sure she's not just returning out of boredom or ego, but because she felt the emotional pull created by your independence. Women return for two reasons: unresolved feelings or renewed respect. You're looking for the second one. But sometimes she doesn't return at all. She replaces you quietly or immediately or eventually. And while that may feel like rejection, it's actually a blessing disguised as disappointment. A woman who can detach without hesitation was never anchored to you emotionally. Your absence didn't reveal some hidden flaw in you, it simply revealed the truth about her investment. And truth is exactly what distance is meant to surface. Think of it as a filter. The right woman steps closer, the wrong woman fades out. You're not losing anything. You're defining what and who belongs in your life. The ending of this cycle isn't about winning her back or watching her walk away. It's about understanding where her heart really stood the whole time. And that's why the final outcome never determines your value. It only exposes hers.
When you step back from a woman, something deeper than silence happens. The space you create doesn't destroy the connection. it reveals it. Your absence becomes a mirror, reflecting what was always there but often buried under routine, validation, or convenience. And that's the truth most men overlook. They think distance is a risk. In reality, distance is clarity. If she values you, the gap pulls her closer. If she never did, it frees you sooner. You don't have to chase to keep someone who truly wants to stay. You don't have to prove your worth to someone who already recognizes it. And you never have to fight for relevance in the life of a woman who genuinely feels your presence, even when you're not around. The right woman doesn't need convincing. She needs consistency. And consistency comes from a man who knows who he is, even outside the dynamic with her. So ask yourself, in your past connections, were you over-investing? Were you trying to fill silence with effort? Were you shrinking your standards just to keep someone from slipping away? Or were you giving your attention to someone who never earned it in the first place? Absence isn't punishment. Absence isn't manipulation. Absence is a strategy, a way to understand the truth before your emotions cloud it. It's the most honest test of compatibility you will ever use because it strips away everything except what's genuinely there. A man who understands this walks differently. He doesn't rush. He doesn't plead. He doesn't fear losing someone who was never truly choosing him. He moves with a sense of grounded strength that makes him magnetic. Not because he's playing hard to get, but because he's anchored in self-respect. If this message hit something in you, if it made you rethink your last relationship or the one you're in right now, then do one thing. Stay with this journey. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with a man who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, has a woman ever shown her true intentions through your absence? The conversation doesn't end here, but your chasing should.